Truckless Monday here on What the Truck, Monday, October 13th, 2025. I am your host. It is Malcolm Harris. Y'all, thank you so much. I hope you guys had a lovely weekend. It was a pretty good weekend for me, man. Watched some good football. My Tennessee Vols did what they had to do, made some chicken wings, nothing too crazy, and I hope you guys had a fun, safe, and relaxing weekend as well. Y'all, it's a beautiful day in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but we're going to be talking about the storm. I'm talking a storm watch when it comes to trends, talent, and tech. Joining me today are going to be two guests. The first is going to be Tim Crawford, the CEO of Tenstreet. He's going to be breaking down Q3 driver hiring and retention data, as well as sharing how carriers can navigate today's stormy market while recruiting and retaining drivers successfully. And then Carly Gumby, the VP of Revenue at Transfix, is going to be joining to talk about pricing, automation, AI fatigue, and winning when it comes to RFP season, the insights you need to stay ahead of the game. Y'all strap in. This has never been a better start to a What the Truck here on Monday. But before we get started, we have to show some love to the people that make it happen. Descartes Macro Point.
Trusted by shippers and preferred by brokers, Descartes MacroPoint is the industry's best transportation visibility and risk monitoring platform. Deliver confidence with real-time insights and automated alerts to keep freight moving and your customers informed. Less risk, more connectivity. That's Descartes MacroPoint. Visibility you can trust.
Every load matters when it comes to your reputation. That's why the world's top companies rely on Descartes MacroPoint for visibility and risk monitoring. Keep customers confident, freight moving, and freight operations in sync. Descartes MacroPoint, visibility that you can trust. All right, y'all, to kick off headlines today, we're going to kick it overseas. There is a spike when it comes to tariffs, all right? This article that was presented by Stewart on Friday essentially talked about how containers are upwards of 270% when it comes to container cranes with combined and existing tariffs. All right, so I'm going to give you guys the breakdown. It's 100% when it comes to on ship-to-shore cranes, 150% on other container handling equipment, and then, of course, there's the base of 25%. So that's where those numbers are from. Many U.S. ports are going to rely on heavy Chinese manufacturers, of course, for lifting gear. This sudden cost spike could stall replacement projects, delay modernization, and much more when it comes to expenses. Port leaders are already trying to get ahead of this when it comes to exemptions as well as delays. So for carriers and supply chain players, what does this mean? Of course, the ripple effects are going to mean slower turnaround times, higher handling fees, and added pressures on port efficiencies. Check this article out right now from Stewart on FreightWaves.com. And we're also going to go to this next article. And the reason I'm laughing is because the source that this came from, all right? So this was an article that was dropped from Craig this past week. And this essentially said, according to a source, Mother Trucker, all right? I didn't say the word, but Mother Trucker, a YouTube news source, I have got to be more mature, guys. A YouTube news source covering the trucking industry reported that Montgomery Transport LLC, Birmingham, Alabama-based trucking company, has filed for bankruptcy. So over 1,000 folks that were currently with this organization are no longer employed. So drivers were reportedly told to stop operations immediately, leaving many stranded mid-haul, which is nuts. And then beyond the human cost, it's going to tighten capacity for whoever was dealing in this certain region. Of course, shippers and brokers are dependent that were on this carrier may be scrambling to shift freight, and insurers are also going to be looking at this in a weird light and trying to mitigate risk moving forward when it comes to other parties as well. So that's definitely something to look out for. Shifting up north, the Canada Post is resuming delivery with rotating strikes. So they're restarting operations. It's been a nationwide work stoppage. Of course, some regions will still have service while others may still face some disruptions depending on their daily schedule. So for the cross-border and North American parcel flows, this is going to add a layer of uncertainty, transit times, and recruiting strategies and contingency. Of course, plans need to be made, especially when it comes to shippers working in or through Canada. Union leadership is describing the strike as tactical, not necessarily a full retreat. And then finally, C.H. Robinson is unveiled some tech to boost drop trailer visibility. This was actually dropped today, guys. And this article I saw and thought was very, very informative. They're launching a new program designed specifically for the utilization and visibility of drop trailers. This system promises real time status updates, SQU level type of tracking, as well as analytics that help optimize trailer usage. Drop trailers, of course, are going to be something that is very, very hard to navigate. I've been in this space for quite a while. There's a lot of blind spots specifically when it comes to drop trailers. So definitely better visibility could reduce, again, empty moves, shorten dwell times, and improve coordination across facilities. So the big test here, guys, is very simple. How widely and quickly is this going to be incorporated when it comes to the adoption of technology? All right. So those are our headlines. For more information, what I would urge you guys to do, again, visit our website at freightwaves.com for more insight and information. So want to now kick it to our guest that is coming up. I'm super, super excited for this guest. There has been, to me, just a lot of conversation that I've had on the back end, and I was getting to know this person. And for me, I think that she is awesome in the things and the research that I've done about her. Want to introduce Carly Gumby, the VP of Revenue at Transfix. She's going to join us again to talk about pricing automation, AI fatigue, and winning peak season and RFP season as well. Carly, what's going on? How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. How was your weekend?
It was great. It was really relaxing. A little bit of fall festival stuff with the kids. So
Awesome,
good.
awesome. Is
Yeah.
fall your favorite season? I'm a fall guy for sure. I think my color palette is 100% fall.
I love fall. In Florida, we don't get much of a fall, so below 80 is a solid fall day for me.
Definitely. I could get that. Well, again, Carly, thank you so much for being on the show. Your team was awesome to work with as well. So excited to get started. And can you kind of share just the initial story, right? When it comes to Transfix, what inspired its founding and how has it grown into this company and organization today?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's a story I've been telling for years. It's pretty unique. I mean, it started with two people that didn't know each other, Drew McElroy and Jonathan Salama, coming together about 13 years ago and kind of sharing this mission to bring the freight brokerage into this world of digitization, which was very buzzy over the last couple of years. Drew grew up in trucking. He grew up in his parents' business. He was working out of his parents' basement when he was younger, like calling trucks when dad was dial a truck to cover loads back in the day. So he knew firsthand all of the manual and tedious tasks that come with it. And so he wanted to find a way to make that easier for the operators on the other side. He was introduced to Jonathan, who's this brilliant technologist and our CEO today. We kind of joke that it was like an arranged marriage. Drew came with these deep industry roots, and Jonathan had these experiences in startups and building technology and being quick and nimble. And so together they built Transfix at a time when no one had heard of a digital freight marketplace.
Wow, no, that seems like a match made in heaven and something that to me is a story that is worth telling. And, over the past decade, it seems that Transfix has evolved so rapidly, kind of to your point. What do you think has been, again, the key indicator of growth when it's come to Transfix over the last decade or so?
I mean, I'm biased, but first and foremost, it's like some of the absolute most brilliant and best people I've had the privilege to work with in this industry are either here at Transfix or have spent time at Transfix. From day one, our foundation has been a mix of grit and curiosity, and a little bit of heart, maybe more than a little bit. But honestly, I think that's kind of our secret sauce. But equally important, we all show up every day with the mindset that our customer comes first. We've spent our entire journey in this industry building alongside our customers, whether it's back in our early brokerage days. One of our first customers had to kind of believe in the model before actually seeing it, and so they worked with us to create it. We sold the dream and the vision, and they worked with us even when we were a broker building our shipper app, like our shipper facing TMS. We had three of our shippers partner with us to build that. So I think that constantly working alongside our shippers and today our brokers to develop it. As we shifted our business model, it became even more important to listen to what they were saying and build alongside our brokerages. And I think that's kind of part of our DNA now. So if somebody tells us they need something in the UI or they need us to build something out, that's what we do. We're a team that's nimble and scrappy, and you have to constantly be evolving and stay up to the needs of your customers to kind of stay in the game.
Carly, you talk about a team that's nimble and scrappy, and I think as you know, your position specifically, I think you're the nucleus, right? I think that in your role specifically, when it comes to revenue, I mean, you see the totality of an organization, and you're a very important chess piece. How does this kind of shape the way that you guys approach specifically shipper as well as customers and just general, I would say, interactions when it comes to Transfix from your seat specifically?
I think first and foremost, it's important to say that I'm deeply invested in the success of our customers, our brokers today, because I've lived it. I grew up in this industry. I understand high markets and low markets, and when things are great and when things are tough, and the calls in the middle of the night. When we were a broker, I used to oversee the account management and sales teams, so I understand the pain points that they feel in this market. So there's a lot of empathy that comes with that experience and being on both sides of the coin. Right now you're actually catching me in the middle of a 4-week sprint of on-sites and travel with customers. I leave again tomorrow morning, and sitting with them through onboardings and sitting with prospective customers into what their needs are and how we can build everything out. So my goal is to just make sure that our customers are at the core of everything that we do and that they are deriving the most value out of it. And I think that kind of cascades through the organization, as with Transfix, and then, as our brand and reputation kind of go out into the industry.
Absolutely. Now, there's a big emphasis on the solutions console right now. It's a huge focus for you guys. Can you break down the end-to-end pricing management system and how it works simultaneously when it comes to spot as well as contract?
I'd love to. It's one of my most favorite things to talk about.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so our solutions console is really about it's a single hub for this kind of end-to-end pricing management.
Okay.
It's built to simplify, it's built to speed up how brokerages and 3PLs kind of price across both spot and contract.
Okay.
So there's kind of two pieces that run in parallel, and it's made to be used by multiple end users, whether through account managers, pricing, analysts, sales. But for RFPs, for the first part, we've turned into what used to be a really manual process that kind of would start once you received the RFP. And it would just take forever to we used to call it deving out a spreadsheet and, trying to figure out which lanes work. And we've taken that and we've changed it into seconds or minutes, if you will. With our smart uploads, you can literally drag and drop your shipper's spreadsheet in any format into our proprietary model, into our solutions console, and it'll auto-generate rates across the entire RFP in under 3 seconds per lane. And that's super exciting because it gives you back time to think about the strategy you want to apply to the shipper itself. What's also important to note is that it's not a market index or a rate aggregator. It's dynamic, cost-based engine that factors in everything from seasonality to major events like DOT, plus your own buying patterns and the behaviors that drive how you buy. So instead of guessing where you fit in between market averages, you're getting the most accurate possible rate based on your actual behavior and cost structure. And so you can do that for a single RFP, but from there, you can manage multiple RFPs in one view. We give you the ability to collaborate in real time across your teams. You can tweak rates if needed. You can access different data points like your potential margin risk, where there could be slippage, what your revenue could be, what's your volume, the timing of when you're going to receive the shipments, all before you hit submit. So it gives you a full transparent view of your contract strategy. And then from there, doesn't stop. We've added our award management tool. So once you receive the award from the shipper, now you have a way to upload it and track what you've been awarded versus what you've been tendered, and kind of have a better understanding of when you see those peaks of volumes. How are you performing? Did you buy as aggressively as you thought you were? Are you a bit more conservative? Kind of what are the behaviors that are leading to the actual output of where you're buying, and what's that delta? So you have that full kind of piece in the contract management RFP workflow tool that we have. And then in parallel, that same data engine that powers your contract is a unique cost model that powers your spot. So whether you're quoting dry van or reefer or flatbed, you can still quote confidently on spot and have an understanding of your carrier utilization, what carriers have you used in the past, what drives your cost, have an understanding of what your risk profile is on that lane. Is it a volatile market? Are rates more variable? Is it pretty safe to go aggressive because you're buying more aggressively? You have all that in this UI, and we're just taking your data, making it more digestible, putting it through an algorithm that helps you not only understand what's happening in the market, but where do you as a broker specifically buy against that place in the market.
Carly, as a freight broker, I'm sitting over here grinning ear to ear because I'm just like, well, I wish I had that. Like that would have been very, very helpful. But no, that is amazing. And kind of sticking with this theme of freight brokers as well as shippers, how are they leveraging automation to increase this efficiency and reduce these operational headaches that you and me both know they really do always pop up on the back end?
Yeah. First, I'll just say I agree with you. Before I came to Transfix, I had worked at a different brokerage where things were a bit more traditional. Transfix was a bit cutting edge, and I remember just coming in and seeing kind of all the automation that they had applied to a lot of these more mundane tasks, or a lot of the stuff that took you out of your time with the shipper. And I was equally as excited when hearing about it for the first time. In terms of how brokerages are approaching it, I think it's interesting. Every brokerage is unique in how they approach automation. And a lot of that's depending on their own individual goals, right? So I can tell you that our customers are using it to supercharge their strategy. They want to increase their win rates. They want to land more loads. They want to also get more profitable freight. They want to kind of cut that margin degradation so they have an understand of where that is. And so on the automation side, we're seeing like what I talked about previously with the process of an RFP. It used to be like, all right, you have this massive file, you have to kind of like dev it out and normalize it and figure out where you want to be. You're going to get your coffee, you're going to put your headphones in and like take hours doing it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're listening to Life of a Showgirl and kind of going through it. That's what I'm listening to. But you start digging through these giant spreadsheets, and this is where we're seeing that automation come into play for our customers. We don't have to spend all that time, kind of analyzing and going through this and pulling all the data to understand where did we buy or where did people buy. And then when you're done, God forbid you upload it and there's like a wall of errors, right? So we're trying to take that pain away. And the automation that we're creating and that we're driving and that we're seeing results with our brokers is that it kind of helps eliminate a lot of those mistakes that get taken when data is asynchronous and it's on one spreadsheet sent to this person and this person and this person. And so instead of having those multiple spreadsheets fly between offices, everyone's working from the live data set. Everyone's working kind of from that same automation and understanding where the cost is. And it's really about simplifying the process so that brokers can focus less on all of that cleanup and all of that kind of like combining of ideas and opinions, and more on strategy and how to win the freight.
That is fantastic stuff. And I think the piece where people oftentimes in brokerages miss, I would say, is pricing strategy, specifically when it comes to something contracted that requires a lot of attention, sometimes a lot of detail and finesse. Can you walk through trends or just insights that your platform that you're speaking about, what is it currently seeing and how it's shaping and helping kind of assist when it overall comes to pricing strategy execution?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest challenges for brokers right now is that they're sitting on a gold mine of
Yeah,
data and they don't always know what to do with it.
definitely.
Most of it lives within their TMS or it's scattered across different systems, and it's really hard to see the full picture. Um, you can take a look at the last 20 loads that you moved, but it's not all in one place, and it's definitely not easy to pull meaning from it. Um, I think what our platform does and the way it's kind of reshaping thing is it's reshaping the industry, like you said, is that it's making this data more digestible. It's pulling everything into one place so that brokers can actually see what their buying pattern is, but also what are the behaviors over time. Where do they buy? Why do they buy that way? Do they respond quickly to seasonality? Is complacency setting in on a lane that was once a power lane and they're kind of slowly losing their edge there? Taking all of that information, making it so that you can really easily digest it and understand it, and then pairing that with your goals, that's when things start to click. Like that's when the magic happens. I think that the biggest shift we're seeing now in people having this data and kind of reshaping things is no one can afford to take on negative margin in this market. And I think the way that brokers view the cost of acquisition for a new shipper is changing pretty dramatically. And so instead of focusing on paper rates, which, the good, bad, and the ugly have happened in the past with those, brokers are thinking more strategically.
Definitely.
Um, yeah, like what can we actually price sustainably over the duration of the contract, and how can we keep this kind of more long term? And then I think that's the real change, because it's not just about like winning the load for today. It's really about winning smart, sustainable freight that supports your business.
I couldn't agree more. And it's also about long-term vision as well. It's like, don't step over dollars to get to pennies, right? Like, let's execute what we have in front of us and also make a game plan and strategize for 3, 6, and 12. So 3 months, 6 months, and a year out, and what this is going to look like. So, no, I think you spoke to that extremely well. I want to speak and change topics to change management very briefly, because it's huge, right, when it comes down to it. And what advice do you have for fleets or teams that are adopting to new tech or digital transformation without necessarily getting burnt out? Because it could be demo after demo after demo, or it could be, hey, I want to sit 15 minutes just for a quick one, meeting. I mean, that's a lot of time that people in the industry right now just simply don't have.
Yeah, I mean, I think change management is something I'm really passionate about. I've seen it work really well, and I've seen when it's not applied really well into what that is. I think the biggest thing is when you're sitting on the other side of the coin and you're sitting through all of these demos, there's obviously got to be the why, right? Like everybody, mostly the decision makers are much higher up, right? And so you've got to think about the why and the application to the end user, into how it's going to benefit not only margin strategies and cost per load and all of these kind of high level strategies, but how is the end user going to get more time from what that looks like, and how are you sharing and cascading that information? I think the biggest thing that successful change management has is all of it has to come from the top. It has to come from leadership. And leadership has to be radically transparent about the why. Why are we doing this? Why do we think that the value is not only here at the top level, but also at your level? And when you aren't stuck in a lot of these autonomous kind of mundane tasks, what's the expectation for how you're going to grow in that? Because you don't want AI to leave your account managers and your brokers with this feeling like, well, if it takes my job or it takes this part of my day, what's left for me to do? So I think it's really important to kind of articulate, what are these tools going to accomplish? Why are they taking these tasks away from you? And what's the expectation from here for the end user, and how they grow their accounts or how they build their carrier relationships? And what exactly does that look like? Does it come with having more engagement, asking smarter questions, thinking big picture, so that you have more of these small wins? I think there is a lot of fatigue from all of these demos, and everything is really shiny. And there's some pretty incredible companies doing some really great things out there. But we kind of joke around here at Transfix that every broker is like its own unique little snowflake. It operates in its own way. They have their own goals, their own strategies, and you really have to think like, is the end goal of this product that I'm demoing, is it going to help us get there? Does it serve the end user? And kind of what else do we want from them if it does automate some of these different pieces of the life?
You mentioned about there. I love that example, by the way, of a snowflake because it is true. I mean, yes, that is definitely 100%. I can validate that. You mentioned when it comes to fatigue, and there's a lot of AI fatigue right now, but also it's like to automate and make things more operationally efficient, and to work at your highest potential and level. There has to be that. How do you roll out AI? Because it's a hot topic. Everybody's talking about it. I mean, we talk about it all the time here on What the Truck. But then also, it's like you don't want to keep overwhelming teams, clients, and everybody kind of within the organization. So, how do you balance that kind of that communication, rather?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody has a lot of opinions on this right now,
Yeah.
especially on LinkedIn. I've seen a bunch of different hot takes, and I think I think it's all dependent on your go-to-market strategy. But I think it's really important to remember that not all automated solutions are here to replace humans. And there's like a lot of talk and tug and pull about that as to like which ones are and which ones aren't, and where you get the value from it. Um, I think they're really here. The really strong ones are here to kind of replace that repetitive, low value tasks that keep people from doing the work that actually drives revenue, like strengthening relationships with carriers or understanding a shipper's network more deeply. Efficiency is really great, but it only matters when it helps you to build better relationships. Um, and I think that's what I was talking about earlier with change management. It's not about taking away the value. It's about giving giving people more time to focus on the relationships. Um, Leveraging AI, I think it's most valuable when it's clearing out the noise. It's automating those time consuming tasks and that repetitive work, not parts of the job that create connection and trust. I think those will never go away. Nothing replaces relationships in this industry. I think that's like one thing that hasn't changed through all of these different market cycles, is that relationships are the backbone of brokerage, plain and simple.
Could not agree more. Now let's get to the bacon, what I call the bacon of the interview, meaning this is why we're here. All right. The things I want to specifically ask you in kind of like a rapid fire mode. Peak season, of course, is here, right? I mean, it's on the plate right now. So when it comes to it, how should they prepare when it comes to RFPs and staying competitive where there has to be some money to be made, right? But also it's like you gotta compete. What's your advice for them?
I think that you should not be starting your strategy for RFPs and how to compete now that, we're
That's a
in that.
great strategy.
I think that's the biggest thing. This should be a constant evolution of thought among your leadership team,
Yep.
among your account managers, among brokerages that are looking at it. So the biggest thing is don't wait. I think that's the really obvious pull from this, is that you should always be thinking about next year's RFPs. And for me, it's that WIFM point of view, like what's in it for me. You should
Mhm.
always take that perspective of the shipper. What if you were in their shoes? What would you want to see from your partners in this market? And so get ahead of it now. Don't wait to be invited to any of these bids. You should start looking at your numbers not only today, and like weeks, months ago. There's different exercises you could do. You could take your top 5 lanes and analyze how pricing strategies were performed, and be honest about what worked and what didn't. And, it's been a really interesting market. If you lost business or you lost out on business, figure out the why, have more of these conversations. Having these more transparent conversations with your shippers is going to build trust. They're going to see, that you're trying to improve, that you're trying to understand their network. I think as a broker, for us, when we were a broker, it was really about showing our shippers what did we learn, owning our mistakes, which happened, and showing that you've adapted and that you're thinking about the long term, and not only just like the long term of your own brokerage, but a long term of the partnership overall, and kind of like growing that cohort, whether it's through expanding your margin or expanding the lanes that you have within a region, but growing that, year over year, quarter over quarter, to show that you understand how their world works as well as your own. And listen, the best place to start with that is understanding the data that you have in all of your systems. And if you're not sure how to shape that data or how to start to have those conversations, that's exactly what we're here to help out with. We've lived it. I have a plethora of decks that I've worked on from, trying to understand different shipper strategies and kind of different ways that we've approached it. So that's kind of one of the value adds of partnering with Transfix, is that we can help you take those insights and turn them into action well before peak season hits.
This was fantastic. Again, Carly Gumby, the VP of Revenue at Transfix. Carly, this was so insightful, and I just really appreciate you for being on the show today. I learned a lot, and I hope and know that our listeners and viewers got a lot of insight out of this as well. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Of course, of course. Again, Carly Gumby, VP of Revenue at Transfix. That was an awesome segment. And now we're going to transition to our other guest. Tim Crawford, the CEO of Tenstreet, is going to be breaking down Q3 driver hiring and retention data and sharing how carriers can navigate today's stormy market, and also talking about retaining and recruiting drivers successfully. Tim, do I have you in my headphones, sir? Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Malcolm, I can hear you great.
Awesome,
Hopefully you
awesome.
can hear me as well.
Yes, I can. How are you doing today?
I am doing really well. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course, of course. Let's start with the big picture, because your Q3 data shows some trends in driver hiring and retention. What stands out most when you look at this snapshot, Tim?
Yeah, I think what's the biggest thing is drivers are being really, really cautious about how they're thinking about the market. Every time a driver changes jobs, they're out of pocket $1,500, $2,000, right? By the time you turn in truck one and go get into truck two. And what we've seen is that drivers are being really cautious about making that next step. And that's been the stories for well over a year now. But over the last 60 days or so, that seems to be changing a little bit, where drivers maybe are feeling a little bit more optimistic. Hopefully that trend continues, but fingers crossed.
Now, you've caused this, to me, ruckus, because you've kind of categorized this as a storm, right? When it comes to uncertainty, trade concerns, and a tighter driver pool, and the things that we've been reporting here with the compliance capacity crunch here at FreightWaves. What are the biggest challenges carriers are facing right now from your seat?
Yeah, I think what we're hearing is that carriers are under obviously a tremendous amount of cost pressure, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Efficiency is everything. But while they're under that cost pressure, it doesn't mean that recruiting goes away or that they don't have to fill trucks. And so trying to figure out, okay, how do I get more efficient without throwing out the baby with the bathwater, if you will, right? And that degree of balance in context, that's way easier said than done, right? But we think that's the biggest thing that carriers are up against right now.
Now, let's talk a little bit, because when it comes specifically to retention and recruiting, what patterns or warning signs are you seeing right now, specifically with carriers that are often, not necessarily making the mark?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is retention across the board has gotten better, right? As drivers are being a little bit more cautious, we see drivers staying longer at the carriers they're at. And sometimes what we hear from clients is that, kind of patting themselves on the back for, hey, we're drivers are staying longer. Hey, we're making a real dent. And that's sometimes happening. That self-congratulatory enthusiasm happens without really making any changes in how they're interacting with drivers. Right. And so I think it's the risk there for carriers is that you could sort of, take that victory lap when drivers aren't staying because they're really happy with your carrier. They're really stink because they're more concerned about what happens in the market at large, right? And so what we think is going to happen is as we eventually get out of this down freight cycle, and your guess is as good as mine whether that's when that happens, right?
Yeah.
But as that happens, right, and we think there's a lot of drivers who are only at their carrier because they didn't think they had better options, and we're gonna see that turnover really tick up in a way that traditionally, when times get better, retention gets better, right? We think what's going to happen is, hey, when times get a little better, I think the retention is going to really decay before it starts to get better.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, from the things I've seen and obviously been reporting on here for the majority of the month, it's definitely speaking to what you just said. And I want to kind of speak to another point because I want you to put me on some game. I want to understand some strategies and effective kind of methods, right? And I know you're laughing because I know you can. The things you've seen specifically to keep drivers just engaged and then to also just keep drivers in general long term. What does this look like?
Yeah.
Put us on game.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. It's simple to say, hard to do, simple to say. But drivers want to be treated like people,
Yeah.
not like numbers, right? And sometimes, especially I mentioned, sort of, you got this push for efficiency and a push for how can you automate and how can you remove those human touch points. The challenge is how do you get efficient without essentially telling drivers they're going to find their next job or interact with their carrier the same way they interact with the self checkout at Walmart, right? And that's a real challenge, right? What we see happen is on both the recruiting side and the retention side, the carriers that do the best job of interacting with drivers as people have the best results, right? And that's super simple to say, way harder to do, right? But it's been incredibly consistent. I'll give you an example. So the most efficient way to hire a driver, the driver application source that converts head and shoulders better than everything else we see on the platform, is referrals from other drivers, where there's that human connection, right? The second highest source is when a driver makes a phone call. Their first contact is a phone call to a recruiter, but that converts it twice the rate of every other lead source. Now, it doesn't mean, hey, all recruiting should happen over the phone, right? I get that that's super expensive. Not all drivers are going to do it. It's difficult to get attribution to your recruitment advertising spend, all the things, right? But what it says is that, hey, every chance you get to get a person in the mix, right? You have a better chance of making that connection with the driver, or just as much, hey, you make it clear that there's not a connection with that driver, and both the driver and carrier can go on their separate ways and don't try to spend any more time on a relationship that's not going anywhere.
Definitely. Now, let me ask to kind of follow up on that because something popped up in my brain. Are there any differences when it comes to smaller versus larger fleets when it comes to that
Yeah,
approach that you just
that's
mentioned?
a really insightful question. Here's what we see happening in the data. By and large, drivers have, if you look over the arc of their career, a preference to work for smaller carriers. Generally speaking, not all drivers, but generally speaking, hey, you see drivers early in their career prefer to drive or have to drive for a mega carrier. Somebody's going to have the infrastructure to support an inexperienced driver or trainee driver, that sort of thing. And then there's a shift over their career that there's a preference towards smaller carriers. But what happens on that preference is those preferences get swamped by sort of the economic realities, right? Where bigger carriers are less exposed to the spot market, they're more stable, they're less likely to go bankrupt, all those things. And so those macroeconomic realities swamp those preferences. And how that works out in the labor market is you can see where drivers apply, especially during a down market. So if you look at the data, what we see right now, and you compare September 25 to September 24, lead applications for most carriers are down if you look at the average overall. But if you look at break it out by fleet size or by fleet type, private fleets, right, are viewed as a safer bet, essentially, if you're a driver. They have more applications in September of 25 than they did in September of 24. The bigger fleets also have slightly more applications than they did in 25 over 24. The smaller the fleet, hey, probably the more they're struggling to get drivers interested in them, because drivers in the back of mind seem to be thinking about, hey, I don't know if you're going to be around in 6 months. I don't know if you're going to be around in 3 months. Do I really want to bet that I'm going to be there long enough to make up for what I'm going to be out of pocket by leaving my current carrier, right? We saw what was the fleet last week, Montgomery,
Yes.
that went bankrupt overnight. I think that echoes through the job market as drivers are making decisions about where they're going to go, and that gives large fleets an advantage in terms of, hey, they're a little bit more of a known quantity, and they're viewed as being more stable and have more staying power.
Tim, I mean, and we reported on this today, talking about that 1,000 employee, just bankruptcy. It's crazy. And I want to kind of go through this next one because I want to talk about specifically operational advice and kind of setting up drivers for success. Because, from the moment they apply through onboarding and, of course, being out there OTR, like specifically, how does this work? Like, how would you just kind of quantify and make this most successful for drivers that are going through the process?
Yeah, here's what we see happen when a driver goes into the market, on average, 3 times a year. Every 4 months, the average driver has at least done one lead form, right? And when they go, they dip their toe in the water, trying to see if they've got the best offer possible. They tend to put in at least 2 lead forms. Now, if they go a little further into the process and they do a full application with somebody, now they've put in, on average, now they put in at least a lead form at now 4 carriers. So now they're talking to 4 carriers. And if they get hired in one carrier, the drivers that get hired, they've actually submitted applications to 5 carriers on average. Well, every one of those 5 carriers probably has given that driver, I don't know, 4 or 5 to-dos. So that driver, as they're deciding, they're getting close to deciding, hey, they're gonna accept that job offer. They've got scattered across their life 25 to-dos, right? From 5 different carriers. I need a copy of your CDL. I need a copy of your med card, right? I need a W-2 on the carrier that's bankrupt that I'm trying to verify, whatever it happens to be, right? And the carriers that have the most success are the ones that make that process as simple as possible from the driver's perspective, right? The carriers that struggle most, the request from the recruiter comes via a text message. The request from the background processing person comes via phone. Hey, the orientation coordinator is reaching out via email, right? The background screening company is reaching out via phone. Well, all those things, those people where it's you're counting on the driver to kind of do the organization, you end up with less conversion, right? It's a more difficult process. Even in this market, right? Drivers have lots of choices, and making that process simple and fast is in everybody's best interest.
Now, Tim, when it came to specifically a personal level, right? Because obviously, Tenstreet's a technology-driven platform. It's impacted driver experiences and caused, some ripple effects in a positive way. But what made you co-found Tenstreet in the first place and focus so much on these challenges when it comes to this on a day in and day out basis?
Yeah, we try to be. To be clear, there was no long-term vision when we started Tenstreet. We've just been incredibly lucky. And we've tried to be really, really laser focused across our history on, how do you create value for both sides of the market, both carriers and drivers. And one of the things we're really proud of is, we give drivers the ability to save a lot of time on the job application process. I think, we save drivers on average, I think 12 to 14 years of data entry time every month by storing their data for them, so they don't have to rekey it every time they start over, right? And we've taken that viewpoint and we've tried to extend it sort of across everything we do. How do we make life easier across the board? And we don't always get it right, but that's the goal. That's where we're aiming for.
Tim Crawford, the CEO of Tenstreet. Tim, thank you so much, man. I cannot wait to have you back on the show. You absolutely crushed it today.
Hey, absolutely my pleasure. That was a lot of fun.
That was so much fun. Again, Tim Crawford, CEO of Tenstreet. Guys, just want to say really quick, you guys know what's next week, and I don't know what more to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. It's F3 coming next week here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, so make sure you don't miss out on what is to come. F3, again, the 21st and the 22nd. There are still tickets that are available, so make sure you are visiting our website now for those last chance deals when it comes to getting in the building. I'd hate for you to miss out. There's going to be the best of the best events, of course, demos, and you get to see me doing my thing with the great team here at What the Truck. The road ahead, Beth Young with Velocity. We spoke today, this morning, and she was outstanding, and I think you guys are going to enjoy her. And I have one more guest that needs to be confirmed as well. That's it for me. It's been another episode of What the Truck, Trends, Talent, and Tech. I'm your guy, Malcolm Harris. I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.